Happy Friday, everybody. However you may be, wherever you may be, thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of the All Cardinals podcast. My name is Donnie Druin, joined on this wonderful Friday night with Richie Bradshaw. Go and follow us on Twitter at Don and Druin, at Richie Brads 36. Richie, it's a Friday night. The Phoenix Suns just got done playing. We are two losers with nothing else better to do on a Friday night than talk some Arizona Cardinals football. How are you?
I'm good, and you can say loser all you want. That sounds like the life to me. So here's to our little happy hour of talking football. I got myself a little Dr. Peppy. Please sponsor
Okay.
me.
Phenomenal. Yeah, I got the Shirley Temple. We were talking before we started recording about how
Yes.
amazing anything cherry flavored is. So,
Oh, cherry's the
yeah, thanks
best.
to everybody joining us in the chat. We're just kind of hanging out. Shoot us a message, leave a comment, all that other good support. And Rich, it's been a very busy week for the Arizona Cardinals and for people like us who cover them. We did a previous episode after the first day of free agency, kind of talking about all their four big major signings. We're not going to get too deep in to the things that they had done, but yesterday especially and the day before that, very busy. The team released DJ Humphries. They made a signing in Jonah Williams. They made a trade with the Atlanta Falcons. The Marquise Brown signed somewhere very late last night. We're going to get into all of that very soon. I love Mikey, man.
Mikey,
I
what's
miss
up?
Mikey in the live chat. Appreciate all the support, all that good stuff. But let's get right into it, man. DJ Humphries, 30 years old, 9-year NFL vet, four-time captain, 40 years in the Cardinals, was released yesterday. I feel like maybe not yesterday, Wednesday. I don't know. Time does not exist. It was a move a lot of people saw coming. 2 years left on his deal, tore his ACL in week 17. Um, he was a post June 1st designated cap hit. So they're going to save around $16 million with the move, but they still have to carry $13 million of that until June 2nd on the books. First and foremost, I think you need to acknowledge DJ Humphries, the person. I mean, what a guy on and off the field, in the locker room. And I think it's just another unfortunate reminder that it's very much a business in the National Football League. He will definitely be missed, but I do feel like it was kind of time for Arizona to move on.
It was. And, for a guy who played 9 seasons in Arizona, had very good success in the desert, and was a bright light in an otherwise very dark area for what's it called? The just a bad offensive line situation
Sure.
that the Cardinals have been facing for years and years and years. And Humphrey was, exceptional, especially considering everyone that had come before him. Moving on from him, always going to be really tough. This is a high level player. This is somebody that had set a standard for the Cardinals, but the time has come. He's very expensive. He's coming off injury. He's over the hill now. And Paris Johnson is the future at the position. And then they bring in Jonah Williams, which we'll talk about. But the writing felt on the wall, for DJ Humphries. Definitely appreciate his time. One of the best Cardinals of the last 10 years. But yeah, all good things must come to an end.
Yeah, Humphries was kind of a cut candidate even before that torn ACL in the second to last week of the season. I feel like that kind of just made it a little bit easier. And obviously, he wasn't going to be ready by time the 2024 year got rolling around. I would have been surprised if he even made it back like halfway through the season, right? Because Kyler tore his ACL like early December and then ended up coming back like midway. It would have been a stretch for Hump to kind of do that too. So they cut Humphries, they cleared that cap space, and people, you and I are wondering who the hell is going to play left tackle for them. Like, are they really that confident in Kelvin Beachum? Moving over there. There was talk about Paris Johnson Jr. moving to left tackle. Like, what is going on with the Cardinals at the tackle position? Who are they going to get to replace DJ Humphries? Well, sure as you know what, I don't even think an hour later it was reported Cincinnati Bengals offensive tackle Jonah Williams was joining the team. 2-year, $30 million deal, Richie, $19 million of that guaranteed. This is where things kind of get a little bit interesting, right? He did play the first 3 years of his career at left tackle, made a switch to right tackle last year after the Bengals had signed Orlando Brown Jr. there's been a lot of discourse on where he fits best, on where he should play. A lot of people say left, a lot of people say right. PFF will tell you that he had his worst year at right tackle last year, Richie, but Next Gen Stats actually had pointed out that last year, after making the switch to the side, he had career best in stats just as pressure rate. Pressure rate, sack rate, and average time to pressure. We talked to him yesterday, and I asked him directly if the team had asked him about moving to left or moving to right. Very coyly, he said that's not something the team had discussed, which is absolute lies. Um, he says he really doesn't mind. I talked to Paris Johnson Jr. when the year ended. He said he didn't mind where he played. So it's a lot of, well, wherever coach wants me to go, wherever the Cardinals want me to do. Richie, I'm going to ask you really quick. We'll get into the contract here in a minute, but where do you think he should play?
Right tackle.
Okay. Tell me.
Here's my thinking is he really struggled at left tackle. And if we're being totally transparent, I think he could benefit from moving inside the guard, but that's
been talked about. Yeah.
It's a whole other animal. But to me, he plugs in at right tackle. And I understand what PFF says, but from what I saw, he played a lot better at right tackle this year. It felt like he was much more comfortable. You saw, like Next Gen Stats said, the pressure rate was down for him. So we all know that PFF, there's times where you need to take it with a grain of salt. And I think that was the case for Jonah Williams. I thought he was much better than what PFF wanted to say he was. And I'm not saying he's elite. I'm not saying he's a Pro Bowler, anything like that, but he is more than serviceable. And I look at him as the plug and play there at right tackle. I can understand if you want to put him at left, but I do see Paris Johnson as the higher upside between the two. And yes, Johnson was very good at right tackle this past year, but when you drafted him 6th overall, you were hoping that he could be one of your bookend tackles, whether he was left or right. He had experience at both. And now that you're bringing in someone that, at least to me, feels like a right tackle, you should, in theory, be able to move him to the left side of the line and allow him to, become that dude. That's where I'm at with it. But with Jonah Williams, I definitely see him as a right tackle. Donnie, for what it's worth, I was looking at this today. He has played 100% of the snaps the last 3 seasons. So this is a durable guy too. And that's something that the Cardinals have really needed along the offensive line. So between him and Johnson, no matter who lines up where, at least you got stability.
No, that's completely fair. And I think stability and getting those 2 bookend tackles, like you had talked about, right? Everybody wants the Cardinals to make that big, flashy move, and very understandably so. But the ability to get 2 guys to protect Kyler Murray, to block for James Conner moving forward, I do think that was very, very important. And Jonah's 26, right? Like, he's still very, very young into his NFL
Doesn't
career.
feel like it.
I know, right?
Dude, is it just me, or does it feel like he's been in the league like 10 years?
No, it absolutely does. Yep. I mean, I think that's the Super Bowl effect, watching somebody play on the biggest stage in football.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay. Well, that guy, no rookie's ever playing the Super Bowl. Come on, right?
Right.
Yeah. So 2-year, $30 million. There's a lot of people saying the Arizona Cardinals overpaid for Jonah Williams.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either, man. I really don't.
I think it's good market value. And I understand that $15 million is a lot of money for any position, but as I said, and I'll reiterate, this guy has been healthy the last 3 years. He has not missed a snap. In fact, since his rookie year, when he tore his ACL, he has been a plug and play guy for the remainder of his 4 professional years. He's coming to Arizona. It's to feed a fat horse here. Stability, Donnie. That's something that you need along the offensive line. You need consistency. You need someone that you're going to be able to rely upon. $15 million is what it is, especially when you're getting an average at worst player. But I think he's closer to above average than anything else. This is a really good fit. This is a good price.
Spot Track is showing that his $30 million is sixth in total value for free agent offensive lineman this cycle. His $15 million per year average is fourth, and then the total guaranteed money, $19 million, is number seven. That's all in just free agency. And then just overall moving into 2024, 25 offensive tackles have an annual average of $15 million or higher. Jonah being one of those guys does not concern me at all, especially if you can
No,
get
not at
good play out of
all.
him. You sign him to a multi-year deal. You can re-sign him before he's 29 if you really, really like him. And by then, like, the salary cap's going to shoot up too. So I have no worries. I have no qualms with the position. And I just keep coming back to where he's going to play, because there was a lot of rumblings coming out of Cincinnati, Richie, that he did not want to move from left to right. And there's just some part
He
of me,
asked for
for
a
whatever
trade.
reason. Right. And then he ended up sticking around. There's some parts of me that tells me he would not have came to Arizona unless he was allowed to play left tackle.
Yeah. Well, then here's the thing, Donnie, is that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Throwback to when he came out of college. Your boy, to this day, I think Jonah Williams is the best tackle prospect I've ever seen coming out of Alabama. Dude was flawless. He played right tackle to start his career, moved to left in college in his last year at Bama, and was just finesse. Dude was phenomenal. Gets to the pros, immediately tears his ACL, and has slowly come along. And he's gotten better with each year, like a fine wine. So if he is to come to Arizona and play left tackle, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world, especially because Paris Johnson does have a year under his belt in the pros as playing right tackle. I truly do think that you can switch these guys either way that you would like. It just so happens that both of them played right tackle last year. In the pros, Jonah has more experience at left. In terms of where you drafted Paris, I think he's supposed to be the left. I can totally go either way.
I get that, but dude, nowadays with so many prominent edge rushers coming off the right
Oh,
side,
dude, you need both. It doesn't matter.
right, like you really need two phenomenal offensive tackles to kind of bookend your line.
Right.
And like this isn't like 20 years ago when you and I grew up watching football, and like you needed that like left tackle, and your right tackle was just supposed to
Left
be your
side, strong side.
mauler. Right, yeah, your run game support guy. And the game has changed so much, man. Like you really need a good right tackle. And I just think with Paris Johnson already having one solid year under his belt, why not let him continue that growth?
Yeah, and I wouldn't disagree with you there. And I think that that's honestly probably the smart thing to do would be to, rather than take a guy who's going into his second year and immediately flipping him over to the other side of the line, allow him to continue developing and grooming himself as a right tackle. Can totally understand that argument. Me personally, I think that Jonah is the higher floor at right tackle,
Okay.
and Paris Johnson is the higher ceiling at left tackle, which is where that mindset comes in for me personally.
Sure. And then, like Mikey points out in the chat, versatility from both guys. They could play left, they could play right, and not a bad problem for the Arizona Cardinals, if you ask me. So that happened a little while ago. Richie, you and I were actually supposed to record this podcast yesterday, and then I got a very nice email from the Arizona Cardinals that said, "Hey, I know you live 40 minutes away from the facility, but hey, in 40 minutes we're going to talk to all the new signings, and we're going to have media availability for them." So got my happy ass all the way down there to Tempe, and then here we are recording this on Friday night. What we were supposed to talk about yesterday was the rare player for player swap. The Arizona Cardinals did send wide receiver Rondale Moore to the Atlanta Falcons for quarterback Desmond Ritter. We're going to touch on both sides of the trade, obviously, but just have any quick thoughts before we get into it?
It was time to move on from Rondale Moore. It was a failed experiment. He's still a very talented receiver. He came to the pros. We thought that Cliff Kingsbury was going to get creative with him, and to a certain extent, he did. The problem was it really limited his development, and
Yep.
he's not a complete receiver. I don't even know how much of it is his fault because of the coaching situation, but it was time to move on, move him to Atlanta. Atlanta gets a rental out of him. He's going to be lined up next to Drake London and in an offense that should be a lot more wide open with Kirk Cousins. If it works out, great. But it didn't work out in Arizona. Was time to move on, and the Cardinals are able to get a good depth piece, and that's where I'll tee you up.
Yeah, so it's so interesting because Rondale Moore, second round pick coming out of Purdue, you you really expected so much because you look at the tape and he was just a home run hitter, right? Like he was one big play waiting to happen, and that just never came to fruition in Arizona. And you can point to a couple different things. I mean, I was looking at his numbers before we started recording. I think his like average depth per target was less than a yard his rookie year under Cliff
Yeah, it's
Kingsbury.
disgusting.
Yeah, and like for a guy who is so fast, and I get it. Like you have DeAndre Hopkins who can stretch the field vertically. If you can keep Rondale Moore, get the ball in his hands like in the open field, like there's not a whole lot of guys that can run with him and touch him. But it's just, and for whatever reason, I don't want to blame all of that on Cliff either, because Drew Petzling never really found a way to maximize him in his 1 year stay in Arizona either. I mean, Rondale was even lining up at like halfback during like the shotgun snaps. It was so interesting to see the kind of player he was used as. Yeah. They used him like a gadget guy. I'm not sure how the Falcons are going to use him, but sometimes you just need a fresh start, man. Like it is what it is in the NFL. We've seen that a handful of times, and like you said, with Drake London, with Bijan, with Kyle Pitts, with Kirk Cousins as quarterback, with Arthur Smith now out of Atlanta, like I really don't know what to expect of Rondale. I mean, he could very well be their Cordero Patterson 2.0.
So I like that you mentioned Cordero Patterson, but I'm going to one up you here real quick. Time is a flat circle, and it's a new regime. It's a new roster, all that good stuff. And this literally just crossed my mind as we're talking about it. But you look at a guy like Rondale Moore who does a lot of different things for you. If he learns how to throw the football, is he their next Mohamed Sanu?
No.
But he's a lot smaller because,
Sure.
Sanu was like 6'1", and Moore is, 5'8", 5'9" in cleats.
I'm not buying that.
You think he's taller or shorter?
No, I just don't think he's going to be the next Mohamed Sanu.
Oh, probably not. So, lazy comparison. Shut up. You don't get to be mean to me. How dare you come on my podcast and come at me like that?
Rondale goes, and in comes Desmond Ridder. And I was so interested because there were so many talks about what the Cardinals would or wouldn't do in the offseason. Richie, nobody's talking about that backup quarterback position. Something like Clayton Tune, granted, one game, one start on the road against one of the best defenses in the NFL, against the Cleveland Browns. That was set up for him to lose regardless. Like he was never going to come out of that A, alive, and B, with a win. So I do feel bad for Clayton kind of being set up like that. But you go back and look at his preseason tape. He never really progressed through the reads like you wanted an NFL quarterback to. Granted, he was a rookie. There's still a lot of time. He's a 5th round pick, clearly a developmental guy. But for the team to go and get Josh Dobbs at the beginning of the year, and for the team to go get Desmond Ridder now, I don't think speaks very high volumes about their overall outlook on Clayton Tune. I did talk to somebody who knows somebody, and apparently the staff is very convinced on Tune. They believe he can be a quality backup for years down the road. Maybe they're just bringing Ridder to potentially push him. And for what it's worth, backup quarterbacks now, Richie, are so coveted based on their overall importance. I think Arizona Cardinals fans found out very familiar last year. Ridder doesn't move the needle for me at all. It's not a bad trade and not a good trade. I think they wanted somebody who is kind of similar to Kyler in his skill set. In case Kyler did go down, they didn't have to change too much in what they were doing offensively. It is what it is. I'm not mad they added Ridder to the roster. I do think overall it was a good move. And I mean, if you're going to part ways with Rondale anyway, might as well get a veteran quarterback, right? I mean, 17 games as a starter, and he's pretty cheap. He's 1.2 and $1.3 million for the last 2 years of his deal.
Dude, it's like you said, there really is value to having a good backup quarterback. Like, I understand that at the end of the day, you can have a good backup quarterback, but the moment they come on the field, you panic. Totally understand that. But it's having that insurance, knowing that you have somebody who's got experience, that's a veteran, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And Desmond Ridder does have that. He does have starting experience. He started almost every game last year. I think he was benched for Heineke for a couple of games, but he has starts under his belt, and he's got significant playtime experience. That was something that Clayton Tune didn't really have last year. And it's going to lead him to probably be quarterback 3 on the depth chart right now, which isn't a bad thing. Like, he just needs time to get some snaps and everything. But in the meantime, you have a guy who's proven, and he was proven in college too. I mean, he took Cincinnati, who was not a Power 5 team at the time, to the college football playoff. It was the first time it ever happened, and a very good chance it's the only time that ever happened. So I do think that this is a good value for him. I do like that you bring in Desmond Ridder to be that backup quarterback option for you. I think you could do a heck of a lot worse. And quite honestly, I think this is for moving on from Rondale Moore, who the time was come, as we have already said, we needed to move on from him. This is a pretty good trade.
Can we talk about how fans on Twitter were acting like Rondale Moore was Calvin Johnson, and how they just could not believe Rondale Moore was traded for Desmond Ridder?
Well, and it's even more rich because of how many of those people who did that, all the claiming and the tweeting and everything, were screaming obscenities at him on Sundays because the mother fricker couldn't catch a football and, you know, all those other stuff. Oh, come on. You know as well as I do that there were no minced words when it came to him dropping the football and stuff like that. Right, wrong, or indifferent, we're all football fans.
Nope, 100%. 100%. I did not have mother fricker on my bingo card for us recording tonight.
Did you want to do the other one?
Nope. Okay, we'll move on. Former Cardinals receiver Marquise Brown signed with the Kansas City Chiefs on a 1-year, $7 million deal worth up to $11 million in incentives and all that other good stuff. Marquise spent a handful of years in Arizona, acquired via a draft night trade with the Baltimore Ravens. Never really panned out to be the number one receiver the Cardinals had wanted him to. I first want to get your reaction on him joining the Chiefs and kind of how that fits there, because to me, that's such a win-win, right? I mean, he signs for very, very low relatively to what people had initially thought he was going to get. Gets the opportunity to potentially cash out next offseason. He goes to the back-to-back defending Super Bowl champs. He'll get to play with Kelsey and Mahomes. And I mean, seems like he's going to get a handful of targets next year, no?
100%. So I have two things. One of them is a fantasy PSA. We'll get back to that later. Don't let me forget. For our fantasy football guys, I'm gonna give you some great advice. But as far as his fit with the Chiefs, it feels like a really good one. You take a peek at the receivers that have seemed to flourish there, and you've got Demarcus Robinson, Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman. Everything they had in common is they were fast guys. Hollywood Brown's pretty fast. I don't know if you've ever watched him play.
It's okay. He does have that jet massive chain around his neck in this picture.
Very true. Yeah, he's got wheels. So you get him in an offense that's wide open and allows him to be able to make plays when the ball is in his hands. He's going to flourish. And this is probably the most talented offense he's been in. Now, as far as quarterbacks are concerned, yes, Patrick Mahomes is the best, but he has still played with an MVP in Lamar Jackson and a top 15 quarterback at worst in Kyler Murray. He's played with good quarterbacks before. The difference is he's got a Hall of Fame tight end, and Rashee Rice is going to be taking away attention as number one receiver. And then you've got Isaiah Pacheco in the backfield to make boxes a little bit lighter or heavier, depending on who the defense.
I think teams should know better.
Use
that box light after watching Pacheco run last year.
Oh, dude, yeah, dude ran like Naruto the way he picked up his legs, like he was doing high knees the whole way down the field,
catching all the Pokemon.
Dude, 100%. And with Marquise Brown being plugged into that offense, I think you've got yourself a little bit of a home run threat. But again, we'll talk about later when this isn't the hot topic. I've got a fantasy PSA for you about Marquise Brown.
Okay. Yeah, I think I agree with everything you said. And flipping this over to the Arizona aspect of it, I understandably so. This was Marquise's first time hitting the open market. I do think he wanted to get paid. I mean, dude, during the season, there were talks of him trying to target that like Christian Kirk deal, and that just was not going to come to fruition. I think Englick, from like a desert standpoint, the Cardinals would have been more than happy to get him back on a 1-year deal, especially with the relationship he had with Kyler Murray. But I also can't fault them for trying to move on to it. It does suck seeing him sign for that little money because the cap space Arizona has, the current state of the receivers room moving on without Marquise. And granted, like there's probably going to be a really cool guy available at number 4 for them in the draft, but that's not a guarantee. It's just free agency is all about plugging holes. You want to stack yourself up as best as possible to get there. And granted, like I forgot who they signed today to kind of supplement him, but they need studs, they need names, and you could have talked me into a threat of Trey McBride, Michael Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Marquise Brown with Greg Dortch kind of working in that like slot role with James Conner working in the backfield, and I would take that. I would absolutely take that, but I appreciate Marquise for what he did in Arizona. Obviously, it's just never worked out. And do you feel like it was maybe unfair at times to expect him to produce like an alpha receiver when he was kind of put in that spot when maybe he just is not that?
Yes and no. The reason why I would tell you it was fair to ask was because of what you gave up to get him. You gave up a first-round pick, you got a second, and you sent a third as well. So you gave up pretty significant capital to bring in Hollywood Brown. And you also had the stigma that he's got the connection with Kyler Murray. So he was coming to Arizona and everything was supposed to line up for him. And yes, he had a quality stint in Arizona, but it certainly was not worth a first round pick that they sent for him. Like I can understand where someone would be coming from in saying that it was unfair expectations, but the fact of the matter is that the Cardinals did put that expectation when they sent a first round pick to go get him. So that's where I stand.
I agree. And to the NFL GM's point right here, did you see the text that Andy Reid had sent to Marquise Brown to
that
lure
was
him
so
in?
Cringy. I'm sorry.
That's all he needs.
Did not like it.
That's all he needed does.
Yeah. Dude, it works.
If I'm Andy, it's kind of like the Nick Saban effect. Nick Saban didn't need to recruit. He just needed to walk in and put all of his rings on the counter and say, hey, you want these? Come play with me.
Right.
Granted, there's probably a couple Lamborghinis in the back that we don't really know about, but
don't let Reggie Bush know. That's for gosh darn sure.
That is neither here nor there. It's been an extremely, extremely busy start to the offseason for the Arizona Cardinals. Really quick, though, I really like the moves they're making, man. I really, really do. I don't think they're going to make a push for the postseason next season, but when you talk about rebuilding, when you talk about forming a roster and building foundation for the future, I mean, Monty Ossenfort could have done a lot worse things. And I don't think, getting Christian Wilkins was a little bit disappointing for fans. But when you look at what they're trying to do, the gaps they're trying to fill and everything else like that, I mean, doing it the right way is going to take a little bit longer, but man, like it's just going to pay so much dividends moving forward. Richie, I'll let you handle this one first.
How confident are you in getting Marvin Harrison Jr.? Here's the thing. I am 90% confident he's going to be available at 4. I am about 50% confident the Cardinals are going to stay at 4.
There we go.
That's
the answer. We are not talking about the Arizona Cardinals trading down enough. People are not looking that reality in the face.
Donnie, we have never seen 4 quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, 4 in the draft ever. We've seen quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3 a handful of times, most recently in 2021, where you had Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, and Trey Lance go 1, 2, 3. It feels foregone you're going to have 1, 2, 3 this year. It's going to be some order of Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May. But then you have JJ McCarthy. You have what the Vikings did today, to get a second first-round pick, which absolutely tells me they're moving up. There's no way that you get a second first-round pick and you aren't interested in moving up for a quarterback.
They just wanted to get 2 fifth-year options, Richie. What are you talking about, bro?
Very true. Dude, just I saw someone throw this out, and it just shows the ignorance when it comes to salary cap and dead cap and everything. They were like, imagine the Chargers trade Justin Herbert and take JJ McCarthy with the 5th pick and get him with Jim Harbaugh again. Like, first of all, it would be
No.
insane for Herbert to go anywhere that wasn't the Los Angeles Chargers. I don't care where it is, but like the Charger fans that are out there trying to stir that pot, it's like, why are you doing this to yourself? You just watched Keenan Allen go. You want to watch a quarterback too? It's the
And Mike
Family Guy
Williams
thing,
go.
Donnie. Justin Herbert's a franchise quarterback, but JJ McCarthy could be anything. He could be a franchise quarterback.
Yep. So with the Bears, because the Bears got Keenan Allen for a 4th round pick, with them kind of solidifying that spot, I'm not buying Chicago moving back up into the top 3 to get Marvin.
No.
Do you think the Chargers would try to make a play for Marvin? There's some talk about the Giants trying to make a play for him in the top 5. I don't know, man. At this point in the cycle, I'm very much 50-50. I know, not for a fact, but I know they're entertaining trading down just because they're nowhere close to being where they want to be. And if they can get a monster haul from a team like the Minnesota Vikings, I think you really, really have to consider that. On the other side, though, like at what point do you stop moving down and accumulating dart throws and hoping one of those picks can turn out as good as a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr.? And I think you've seen guys like Justin Jefferson, you've seen guys like Jamar Chase come to the league and almost overnight help transform an offense. The Cardinals are working on their offensive line. It's not all the way there yet, but they got their offensive line. They got their running back. They got their tight end. They really like what they have in Michael Wilson. Greg Dortch is going to have a very, very good opportunity ahead of him this year to make some noise. They spent a lot of quality money on the defensive side of the ball, Richie. There's one name, there's one position that can really just kickstart this thing. 3 initials, everybody knows him, everybody loves him. Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't know how to feel. I don't know how to feel. I think moving down is the smart thing, but I also think there's another part of me where if Marvin Harrison Jr. is available at number 4, you run, you moonwalk to the podium, you make that pick as fast as you can, and you make Kyler Murray happy, you make the offensive coordinator Drew Petzing happy, and you really get this thing going in Arizona.
Donnie, I want to echo something you said. At some point, you need to make your picks.
Yep.
Like, you can't just keep trading down. I understand having more darts to throw at the board, but eventually, quality should oversee quantity. And with the Cardinals having double-digit picks this year, I want to see them be aggressive and move up. I don't want to see them continue to move down. If, let's say, the Vikings do offer you 11 and 23 and something else, you probably take that. Sure. Why not? It gives you 3 first-round picks this year in a deep class and a future pick, whatever. But after that trade down, I don't want to see you stick around or trade down more. I want to see you like what they did last year. They move out of 3 to go to 11, but then they move back up for Paris Johnson Jr. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I want.
That's willing and dealing right there.
Yes. Maximize your ability to trade down, but get your guys. So sure, maybe you move down and you miss out on Marvin Harrison Jr., but then you see Doomsday is still available at 7, 8, 9, and you move back up for Doomsday. Like, that's what you should be doing, is you identify your guys that you want and you know you need to have on your team, and you go get them. You can't sit here and consistently move down. And the best news here is Monty Ossenfort has already demonstrated that he understands that philosophy. So yeah, if you get a haul, move down, but don't continue to move down. Make sure you get your guys.
That lit a fire, brother. That was amazing. That was phenomenal.
You're amazing.
Also, if Doomsday becomes the official nickname for Roman Doomsday. Richie Bradshaw needs 100% of the credit for all of that.
I've been doing this since before the start of the college football regular season. I texted my good friend Spencer McLaughlin, formerly of the Locked On Pac-12 podcast. He's a college football expert. I said, dude, we need to start calling Roman Doomsday because it's a badass name and it's a play on his last name. It's alliteration. It's perfect. And I cannot believe it hasn't taken off yet. But if it does take off, your boy started it. That's all I'm saying.
Yep. First of all, shout out Greg. Love and miss you. There's a lot of talk about the generational tag being put on MHJ. I think that's more than fair. I think if you took his father's name away, I think he would still undoubtedly be the number one prospect in his class.
Here's my thinking with it is, sure, you could take Marvin Harrison Jr.'s namesake out the window.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, what that ends up doing is you have that clutter of like, is it him or is it Neighbors, right? Because everyone wants to say Malik Neighbors as wide receiver 1 for the sake of being different, and it's obnoxious. But what that ends up, I'm sorry, it is.
Oh, no, you're right.
It is.
You're right. I have not seen you this fired up on a podcast in a minute. I'm enjoying this. I wish I had popcorn for this.
Dude, it's my virgin Dr. Pepper has got me all sorts of stirred up right now. But no, what ends up happening is he goes through this draft process and is not holding back anything. Because I think right now the reason why he doesn't participate in the combine or anything like that is the chance that it holds him back. Because I firmly believe he is a 4.3 runner. And I believe that he would literally jump out of the gym. So if he doesn't have that namesake, yes, Marvin.
Let's get this out of the way right now. Like him talking at the podium, him doing anything on the field, nothing, he would not have improved his draft stock.
Exactly.
He already knows he's a top 4, top 5 pick at worst.
Yes. And what I'm saying is, like, if he didn't have the namesake that everyone thinks guarantees it, then he does do that stuff. And guess what? He would blow you out of the water because he's a freak athlete to go with the ridiculous tape. So yeah, absolutely generational. No doubt about it. Put him up there as a prospect. I mean this. As a prospect with like Calvin Johnson, Randy Moss. He is that freaky of a player.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Greg was asking about the Desmond Ridder to backup Kyler thing. So before we get out, we can just kind of recap everything that we said. Number 1, DJ Humphries gone. Jonah Williams in the desert. It's yet to be seen whether he's going to play on the left or the right side of the line of scrimmage. But regardless, these two, they have, two versatile guys that can get the job done. Desmond Ridder for Rondale Moore was completed earlier today. Earlier yesterday. The teams did make it official, so both guys passed their physicals. And then obviously Marquise Brown, something with the Kansas City Chiefs talking is very hard tonight. 1 year, $11 million, $7 million, I think, is the base salary for that. It's just a lot, man. It's a lot of working factors playing into what the Cardinals are doing. It's a lot of seeing tough but necessary moves happen in order for Monty Austin Fort and company to really get the rebuild going into year 2. Really quick, we do want to answer a couple questions before we get out. McBride's the only tight end on the contract. Like 1 year and a chance to address this between 2nd and 4th. I think they should bring back Jeff Swaim. I think Jeff Swaim, they need veteran blocking tight ends, and Jeff Swaim is exactly that. I think you can get him very, very cheap. And I do think he played well for the Cardinals last year. I just think he already knows the system. He's familiar with the team. I mean, it just makes so much sense to me. I think 2 through 4 would be rich.
I think
for
that's
my
really
taste, just considering where other needs are. It would be Steve Keim drafting McBride all over again. Remember a couple of years ago whenever they had Zach Ertz and they needed help across the board, and they saw McBride's name flash on the screen and like, hey, he can't rush the passer, not that I know of, right? Like, what are we doing?
At least hindsight, it ended up being a decent pick.
Oh,
through 2 years, he could flop, but
that Steve Keim guy really knew what he was doing, huh?
Yeah, he sure
27
did.
pick, bolster the pass rush. Yep, I would agree. I would keep an eye on Chop Robinson is a very, very popular name at that pick. And like we've talked about, I think we did on our last mock draft, Richie, the depth at those positions, like late first, early second, is going to be so good for the Cardinals. If I'm Monty, I am not stressing at all. Yeah. And that looks like it's about it, my man. Hanging out on the Friday.
Can I give you my fantasy football advice?
Yeah, because I totally forgot to remind you. Go ahead.
For Marquise Brown, through the whole summer, all you're going to hear is this is a perfect situation and he's going to explode, and people are going to value him as like a low-end wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. And I am telling you right now, do not fall into this trap. It's not because he is not talented. It is not because I foresee a bad season out of him. But Hollywood has played with great quarterbacks his whole career. We know what he is. He is a very good real-life receiver. He is an inconsistent fantasy receiver. The other thing you need to remember is he is the fourth mouth to feed in this offense right now. He is wide receiver 2 behind Rashee Rice. He is behind Travis Kelce until further notice. And Isaiah Pacheco actually got more catches than people were anticipating. And it shouldn't be out of the realm of possibilities that they add a guy through the draft, too. Everyone's saying Ladd McConkey at the end of the first round.
That'd be such a Chiefs pick. Oh, my gosh, dude.
Dude, he has the same agent as, is it Kelce? I can't remember. Somebody on the Chiefs has the same agent as Ladd McConkey. And I'll tell you, moving forward in my mock drafts, which we'll have a fresh one on Monday, by the way.
Yes, sir.
I am probably going to have McConkey there every single time. But that just goes to my point of, like, there's just too many mouths to feed here. And I don't trust Hollywood to be a consistent guy. I still think he's good for fantasy. All I'm saying, do not buy the hype that he's going to inevitably get. He's still the fourth guy on the offense. You can't afford to put that kind of stock unless it's going to be another 2013 Broncos team. You just can't do it. So take it from me, a reigning fantasy football champion.
Okay. All right. Really
quick.
quick.
Heart out, Connor Drios.
Before we end this malarkey, really quick, Mikey did give me a little shout out earlier in the show. I did hop on Locked On Cardinals with Alex Clancy.
Ooh.
I had a blast doing that. That was before all of the big moves happened, so do not listen to anything I said, but please go check that out. And if you like Cardinals coverage on Locked On, you would love Arizona State coverage on Locked On with our main man, Richie, covering them for Locked On Sun Devils.
We talked about whether or not it's time to fire Bobby Hurley, so check that one out if you haven't already.
All right, Richie.
Hot button topic.
From my Shirley Temple to your Dr. Pepper, it's been an absolute pleasure sharing this Friday evening with both you and everybody else. And shout out to your dog Harley in the background, who's just dying to get out from the room.
Staring at the wall or the door.
Appreciate everybody hopping in. 13 people live right now. Go out. Go have some fun. Go see a movie. Go do something. Why are you listening to us, man? But the support is much appreciated. Thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of the All Cardinals podcast. My name is Donnie Drew, joined every week by my main man, Richie Bradshaw. Follow us on Twitter at RichieBrads36, at me, Donnie Drew, and allcardinals.com or FSA.com/NFL/Cardinals. All Cardinals, all the time. Until next time, we'll see you guys.